ever noticed how some people don't need to shout, don't need to fight for attention, yet the moment they enter a room, the atmosphere changes? It's almost like they carry an invisible gravity. They don't push, they don't plead, they don't try to convince, they simply hold their ground. And suddenly, others begin to lean in, to question, to try harder. Why does this happen? Because silence and restraint have a way of commanding attention more than constant availability ever could. Imagine if, instead of rushing to explain, you allowed a pause. Instead of replying instantly, you waited. Instead of being the first to give, you chose to hold back. The shift would be immediate. People wouldn't just notice you, they would rethink how they see you. Here's the hidden truth. When every move of yours is predictable, others know how to pull your strings. They can control you through your impulses, through your eagerness to answer, through your need to be present. But the moment you step back, quietly and without warning, everything changes. The script is no longer in their hands, it's in yours. This episode isn't about becoming cold or distant. It's about something far more important: protecting your peace, reclaiming your energy, and rediscovering your identity. Today, we'll explore why silence can speak louder than words, how selective unavailability can shift power back into your hands, and why being less reactive makes you not weaker, but stronger. And before we dive in, let me ask you something personal. Where are you listening from, and what are you doing right now? Share it in the comments. I always enjoy knowing where this journey finds you. Now, let's step into the heart of it. Why do people take you for granted when you're always there? Let's be honest. When you're always available, always ready to help, always the first to respond, what message does it send? It tells people, I'm here, anytime. Take my time, my attention, my energy. And at first, yes, they might thank you. They may even admire your kindness. But slowly, almost without noticing, something changes. Your effort becomes expected. Your generosity turns into routine. And what once felt like appreciation begins to fade into assumption. You're no longer seen as someone extraordinary. You become predictable, normal, taken for granted. Have you ever felt that sting? The more you give, the less they value it. The more you say yes, the more invisible you begin to feel. But let me tell you this, it is not your fault. Society teaches us to be endlessly giving, endlessly kind, endlessly useful. Yet no one warns us about the cost of always being available. Because the truth is, your energy is not unlimited. Your attention is not free. Every time you give too much to those who don't honor it, a piece of you gets lost in the process. And slowly you begin to wonder, am I fading in their eyes or am I fading in my own? That's why this shift matters. This is not about shutting people out or becoming selfish. It's about choosing more carefully who receives your yes. It's about moving from reaction to intention, from empty giving to purposeful connection. That's how you stop being used and start being respected. So let's go deeper. What does it truly mean to become selectively unavailable? Being selectively unavailable doesn't mean ignoring people to be difficult or withdrawing just to make a point. It's not about coldness, it's about clarity. It's the quiet decision to choose peace over pressure, presence over people-pleasing. Think of it like this. You don't answer every message the moment it arrives. You don't join every conversation just because you're invited. You don't explain yourself endlessly as if your time, your soul, needs defending. Instead, you pause, you observe, you choose. Only when it feels right, when it honors your energy, do you respond. This shift is powerful. Suddenly, you're no longer the easy fix, the always there friend, the constant rescuer. You're seen differently, more respected, more centered. Selective unavailability is a form of self-care disguised as strength. It's the quiet art of saying no without guilt, of protecting your space without apology. And here's the truth no one likes to admit. The people who become angry when you create this distance, they're often the ones who benefited most from your overgiving. Their frustration isn't about you, it's about losing control. Your silence unsettles them, and that's not a problem. It's proof you're finally protecting yourself. So don't rush to fix their discomfort. Don't break your silence to soothe their fear. Stay grounded. Because this isn't about punishment, it's about building a new identity, one rooted in peace, boundaries, and freedom. Now, let's face another truth. Why do so many of us feel guilty the moment we try to protect our time? Why does protecting your own time feel so heavy with guilt? Many of us were raised on the belief that being constantly available equals kindness. If I don't reply quickly, they'll think I don't care. If I say no, I'm selfish. If I need space, I'm cold. These thoughts echo loudly, but they aren't always true. You are not unkind for guarding your peace. You are not selfish for needing rest. You are not distant for choosing space. You're simply human, and being human means your mind, your body, and your heart all need protection. Here's the paradox. Guilt often shows up not when we're doing something wrong, but when we're growing. Guilt whispers loudest when you break the old patterns, when you stop playing the role of the fixer, the yes person, the one who always bends. Of course it feels strange. Of course others may resist. But that resistance, it's not a sign of failure. It's a sign of change. So the next time guilt rises, pause and ask yourself, am I truly doing something wrong? Or am I simply protecting my peace at the cost of someone else's comfort? That single question can transform the weight on your chest into clarity in your spirit. Because healing isn't about always feeling good. It's about doing what is right, even when it feels uncomfortable. And here's where things get sharper. What happens when people start twisting your kindness into a tool for control? Let's talk about a hard truth. Kind people often get used, not because they're weak, but because they're open. If you're the one who always listens deeply, replies quickly, shows up whenever called, sooner or later, someone will see that as an opportunity. They'll text you only when they need comfort. They'll call only when they want a favor. They'll lean on your generosity, but when you need support, they're gone. And if you finally step back, they guilt you. You've changed. You don't care anymore. You're acting different. But what they really mean is, you're no longer easy to control. That's why selective unavailability matters. It says, I'm not here to be your tool. I choose when and how I connect. Not you. This isn't about cutting people off. It's about separating real connection from emotional manipulation. And here's the test. True friends respect your silence. Manipulators fear it. Watch who vanishes when you stop saying yes. Notice who gets angry when you set a boundary. These signs are not meant to break you. They're meant to wake you. Because you deserve relationships built on mutual respect, not silent transactions of energy you never agreed to. So, let's uncover something deeper. Why is silence itself, something so simple, often more powerful than words? Most people believe power comes from quick replies, sharp words, loud voices, but often the real strength lies in silence. Silence is not emptiness, it's space. Space to breathe before you react. Space to protect your emotions when someone tries to provoke you. Space to remind others that you are not at the mercy of every comment, every message, every demand. Think of words as weapons. Some people throw them like knives, blaming, shaming, testing. If you answer too fast, you walk right into their trap. But when you pause, when you let silence settle, instead of scrambling to respond, the balance shifts. You're no longer pulled into their chaos. You're anchored in your calm. This silence isn't cruel. It isn't passive. It's protection. It unsettles those who rely on your reactions, but it also reveals truth, who seeks to connect and who seeks to control. So the next time a message lands heavy in your inbox or a comment cuts sharp, don't rush. Wait. Breathe. Let your silence do the talking, because not every text deserves an answer. Not every fight deserves your voice. And sometimes, the strongest statement you'll ever make is saying nothing at all. But silence is only the beginning. The real transformation comes when you stop reacting automatically, when you break free from old, instant response patterns. Have you ever blurted something out in the heat of the moment, only to regret it seconds later? That's what happens when we live on autopilot. Quick reactions are rarely clear choices. They're old habits, fueled by impulse, often designed to protect our pride in the moment. But every time you react without pause, you hand your power over. You let someone else decide your focus, your mood, your energy. Now imagine doing the opposite. Instead of firing back at a passive-aggressive comment, you breathe. Instead of begging for answers when someone ignores your message, you wait. Instead of exploding when your limits are pushed, you stay still and you observe. This doesn't mean you tolerate disrespect. It means you choose clarity over chaos. It means you act on your timing, not theirs. And in that pause, you regain something priceless: control. Control of your words, your energy, your peace. Selective unavailability is not just about being offline. It's about stepping out of reflex and stepping into intention. With every pause, every breath, every choice to wait, you're no longer a puppet pulled by strings. You're the one holding them. But here's the question: why does this calm silence scare people so much? It may sound strange, but your silence often unsettles people more than your words ever could. Not to you, but to those who once relied on your constant reactions. When you stop explaining yourself, when you no longer reply right away, when you pull back the easy access they once enjoyed, they panic. Why? Because silence creates distance, and distance forces them to face themselves. Your quiet takes away their comfort, the comfort of knowing they can always reach you, control you, or guilt you into giving more. So what do? They poke, they push, they accuse. Why are you acting different? What's wrong with you? But here's the secret: you're not acting strange, you're healing. You're growing. You're finally learning that you don't owe everyone your immediate attention, your constant presence, your emotional energy on demand. Your silence is not the problem. It's the mirror, and the people who fear it are often afraid of what it reflects back to them. So the challenge becomes this: how do you set boundaries clearly and firmly without feeling like you're being rude? Setting boundaries feels uncomfortable at first, especially if you've spent years being the peacekeeper. But a boundary is not an attack, it's protection. It's simply saying, this is what I allow, and this is what I don't. Nothing more, nothing less. You don't need to shout. You don't need a long explanation. You just need clarity. When someone asks for something you cannot give, you can calmly say, I can't do that right now. When someone expects you to answer immediately, try, I'll get back to you when I can. That's not rude, that's honest. Yes, some people might say you've changed. They might call you distant, even cold. But the truth? You're simply tired of carrying what was never yours to carry. You're no longer stretching yourself thin to fit everyone else's expectations. And here's the beauty: those who truly respect you will adjust. They'll honor your space. They'll learn to meet you where you are, not where they demand you to be. And those who don't, let them drift. Because your peace is not up for negotiation. But there's another subtle trap that keeps stealing your energy, even when you think you're setting boundaries. It's the habit of over-explaining. Have you ever caught yourself justifying every little choice? I didn't reply because I was tired. I couldn't come because I was busy. I didn't answer fast because I needed a break. At first, it feels polite, but in truth, it's a trap. Over-explaining doesn't build respect. It builds expectation. The more you explain, the more people believe they are owed your reasons. Soon, they're not just receiving your time, they're entitled to your life. And with every extra word, you hand them more control. The root of over-explaining is fear. Fear of being misunderstood, judged, or rejected. But here's the reality. You don't owe everyone a defense of your choices. You don't need to prove that your boundaries are valid. Silence can be an answer. Space can be a reason. Selective unavailability teaches you this. You can be kind without spilling every detail. You can be present without giving constant explanations. Real respect grows in the space of quiet confidence. So the next time you feel that pull to explain yourself, pause. Ask, am I sharing to connect, or am I defending myself to be approved? If it's the second, let it go. Because you don't need to defend your peace. You only need to live it. And sometimes, the strongest way to live it is to withdraw, with purpose. Sometimes strength isn't in proving, or fighting, or explaining. Sometimes it's in the quiet act of stepping back, calmly, intentionally, without drama. To withdraw with purpose is not surrender. It's protection. It's choosing your peace over battles that were never worth your energy. When you walk away from a conflict that only drains you, you're not weak, you're wise. When you stop chasing after people who don't value you, you're not distant, you're free. This kind of silence confuses those who expect you to argue, to chase, to fix. But when you don't, something shifts. The energy they used to take from you stays with you. You can finally use it to heal, to grow, to rebuild yourself. You're no longer trapped in their story, you're writing your own. And in that story, peace is not a luxury, it's a foundation. But here's the real turning point. What does this selective unavailability give back to you, to your sense of worth and respect? Being constantly available may look like kindness on the surface, but often it's fear in disguise. Fear of being alone, fear of disappointing, fear of losing someone. But when you dare to step back, when you start saying, not now, or even nothing at all, something changes inside you. You begin to hear your own thoughts again. You start to feel whole without constant validation. And that is where self-respect is born. Because self-respect isn't just about confidence. It's about choosing what protects your peace, even if others don't understand it. Every time you practice selective unavailability, you send a quiet but powerful message. My time matters. My energy matters. My life is not open 24/7. This isn't selfish. It's sacred. And as you hold that line, something beautiful happens. People who truly respect you step closer. People who only used your availability fade away. And in their place, you create space for deeper conversations, for healthier connections, for love and friendship built on respect instead of demand. But here's the catch. When you change, some people won't take it lightly. They'll start to test your limits. The moment you stop being endlessly available, expect resistance. Some people will test you, pushing, poking, even creating fake urgency. They'll guilt you with lines like, you used to care, or you're acting different. But let's be clear, this is not about your worth. It's about their loss of control. For years, your quick replies, your constant presence, your emotional availability were tools they relied on. Now that you've stepped back, they panic. They try to pull you back into the role you used to play, the fixer, the rescuer, the yes person. But this time, you don't rush, you don't bend, you don't fall back into old patterns. Instead, you breathe, you pause. You let them sit in their own discomfort, because someone else's loud reaction does not mean you are wrong. Their urgency does not equal your obligation. This is the moment you prove to yourself, I am no longer controlled by other people's emotions. I protect my own. And that shift changes everything. Not just how others treat you, but how your mind begins to heal. So let's explore the deeper gift. How selective unavailability restores your mental health. Your mind is like a garden. Whatever you allow in, the words, the demands, the noise, will grow. If you're always answering, always connected, always giving, the soil becomes overrun. There's no room left for rest, reflection, or recovery. That's when anxiety rises. That's when exhaustion takes root. Selective unavailability is the pruning your mind desperately needs. When you pause before replying, when you allow silence instead of noise, you create space. And in that space, something remarkable happens. You begin to hear yourself. You notice your own feelings, not just the weight of everyone else's. You see what matters, and what's merely clutter. Slowly, your nervous system calms, your focus sharpens, you sleep more deeply. You begin to live from the inside out instead of reacting to every demand from the outside in. So don't confuse silence with distance. See it for what it is, healing. Your mind needs it. Your spirit deserves it. And once you understand that, the next question becomes clear. How do you know what to hold on to and what to finally let go? Not every battle deserves your energy. Not every person deserves your reply. So how do you know what to accept and what to walk away from? The answer is simpler than you think. Listen to how it feels in your body. If it brings peace, welcome it. If it stirs chaos, release it. If it respects your time, create space for it. If it drains your spirit, let it go. Your body knows before your mind tries to explain, does this make me feel safe or does it make me feel small? Does this open my heart or tighten my chest? Selective unavailability is trusting that inner wisdom. It's realizing you don't need to attend every argument you're invited to or answer every demand that lands on your doorstep. You don't refuse because you're afraid. You refuse because you're wise. And when you protect your peace as if it's sacred, it becomes just that, sacred. But let's be honest, changing these patterns isn't easy. It feels awkward, even painful at first. So why is it so hard to break free? The first time you stop being instantly available, it feels strange. A little guilty, a little selfish, maybe even scary. Why? Because you're breaking an old identity. You're no longer the one who fixes everything, who says yes to everyone, who bends until you break, and people notice. Some may question you. Others may resist. They'll try to tug you back into the version of yourself that served them. And that resistance? It hurts, but it's also proof you're growing. Every strong boundary comes with discomfort. Every new habit feels unnatural at first. But think of it like building muscle. The tension, the resistance, the ache, that's how strength forms. Each time you pause instead of rushing, each time you say no instead of yes, each time you choose silence over guilt, you're rewiring your life. And one day, what feels uncomfortable now will become second nature. It will feel normal, natural, right? Because you'll no longer be practicing boundaries, you'll be living them. But let's face it, in this process, you will lose some things. The question is, what exactly do you lose when you stop being always available? When you stop being constantly available, yes, you will lose things. You may lose people who only valued your kindness, not your wholeness. You may lose roles that made you feel needed, but secretly kept you small. You may lose the fake peace that comes from keeping quiet just to avoid conflict. But what do you gain? You gain time, the kind that lets you breathe. You gain mental space, the clarity to think your own thoughts again. You gain energy, the strength to pour into what truly matters. And most of all, you gain truth. You discover who respects you and who only used you. You learn the sound of your own voice, not just the noise of others. And you feel the quiet power of saying nothing and still standing strong. Because here's the beautiful part. The people who remain after you stop overgiving, they're the ones who love you, not your availability, not your quick replies, not your constant yes. They love the real you. And when you step into that truth, something else begins to change. Your relationships themselves. The moment you stop being endlessly available, your relationships shift. Some will fade quietly, some will deepen, and some will transform completely. That may sound scary, but it's actually a gift. Because what remains is built on respect, not routine. You're no longer reacting out of habit, rushing to please, or answering just to keep the peace. Instead, you choose who you give your time to. You decide when to show up and how. And that choice changes everything. Suddenly, you attract people who honor your space instead of abusing it. Conversations feel lighter, more honest. Friendships feel deeper, less demanding. Love feels calmer, less pressured. Because you're not sharing yourself out of obligation, you're sharing out of desire. This is where real intimacy grows. Not in constant access, but in intentional presence. Not in endless noise, but in the quiet trust of respect. And through this, you learn something profound. In a world addicted to attention, peace speaks louder. In a world addicted to noise, peace is rare. Everywhere you look, people are posting, calling, reacting, explaining, but very few are quiet. Very few are still. That's why your calm stands out more than constant chatter ever could. Selective unavailability allows you to step out of the crowd and into yourself. You don't need endless notifications to feel loved. You don't need to explain every move to feel seen. You don't need constant attention to feel important. Your peace is enough. And here's the irony. When you stop chasing attention, that's when people notice you most, not because you're louder, but because your presence is steadier, more grounded, more magnetic. You're not trying to impress, you're simply being. And in a world that runs on noise, that quiet confidence is power. So don't be afraid to be less visible. Don't be afraid to be still. In the end, your calm presence will echo louder than the loudest demand for attention. And that brings us to the final question. With all of this in mind, what kind of life are you creating now? Take a deep breath. You've reached the end of this journey, but perhaps the beginning of a new one. You're learning that silence is not weakness, it's strength. That peace is not avoidance, it's power. That being selectively unavailable is not distance, it's connection to yourself. This isn't about building walls, it's about building respect. It's not about pushing people away. It's about making room for the right people to come closer. You are not here to be endlessly reachable, endlessly useful, endlessly reacting. You are here to live, to breathe, to choose. So ask yourself, what kind of life are you creating now? One shaped by people-pleasing and noise? Or one built on self-respect and calm? Share your answer in the comments. I'd love to know which part of this message spoke to you most. And if you're shadowing along, don't stop here. You're not just practicing English, You're practicing boundaries. You're practicing peace. You're learning how to come home to yourself. Because sometimes the strongest thing you can say is nothing at all.